Good morning, Ms. Lushaba.
Good morning, Chief Justice.
Are you well, ma'am?
Yes, I'm well, thank you.
Thank you. Just tell us about yourself a bit. Who are you? What did you study? How did it prepare you for what you are applying for? Just relax and tell us about yourself and why you believe you are the right person for the position.
Thank you, Chief Justice. My name is Sheila Chiramiwa.
Just put the mic closer because this mic doesn't seem to be loud enough.
Thank you. My name is Sheila Chiramiwa Lushaba. I was born in 1969, the 6th of October, at Baragwanath Hospital.
Wow,
It is now called Chris Hani.
wow.
And I'm a child of Frida Somo and Benjamin Maluleke.
Okay. If I may interrupt you, just about things that have prepared you for what you are applying for.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I schooled at a university preparation program that is UPP in Braamfontein. I furthered my studies at University of Limpopo, that is TEFLUOP, and I've studied BUris and
When
LLB.
did you when was the BUris degree conferred on you?
It was confirmed in 1996 and my LLB in 2000.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you
And
write a mini dissertation as part of your LLB program?
No,
Okay.
I have done the moot court.
Yes. Oh, you
Yes.
did the moot court.
I did the moot court to an extent that I actually believed that I will be a good judge when I was still at tertiary level.
Yes.
When I was doing LLB, I was one of the best LLB student, and I was awarded a bursary, a free bursary by the United Nations, and I actually entered the moot court competition, whereby among all the LLB students, we were almost 500 LLB students, and I was chosen as one of the best two students to represent the University of the North, or Limpopo, that is TEFLUOP, at Morocco. Then we went to Morocco, and at Morocco, we were all combined as from two students from each university in South Africa to united to represent South Africa.
Yes.
Then we went through the moot court. They gave us cases and we prepared ourselves, and we were one of the top 5 in Morocco.
Yes.
Then after my LLB, I was then appointed as one of the first fast-track prosecutors to be trained as a prosecutor. That was in 1997, from June until May 1998. My contract was in Mpumalanga, but I got the training in Gauteng due to the fact that we were informed that the court in Mpumalanga was very small to train us. Then we went to Gauteng, and that's where we were trained. We were 10 all in all. After the training, they had to post us back to Mpumalanga to serve the community of Mpumalanga, because my contract was from Mpumalanga.
Yes.
That's where I was stationed at Middelburg Court. I started working at Middelburg Court as a prosecutor, as a first entry-level prosecutor. And while I was still working there, I managed, through my hard work, as I'm industrious, I became the control prosecutor. While working there as a control prosecutor, I then stayed in Carolina, because it was a long distance for me to travel from Carolina to Middelburg. I requested to be transferred to the nearest place, which was Emelo, where there was a post. I worked in MLO for about 4 years. During my stay in MLO, I also worked as a prosecutor, and for some time, it was during that period where when there are posts in the regional court, we did not apply.
Yes.
They had to just to take you and work in the regional court.
Yes.
At some stage, I was taken to regional court to work there, and I worked there at the regional court and district court at the same time. I then, because MLO was also not that close
Yes.
to Carolina.
I
The-
can see you're relaxed now, and ultimately you became a magistrate.
Ultimately, I became a magistrate in 2013. I was appointed as an acting magistrate. The first time when I was appointed as an acting magistrate, I was placed at a one-person station where there is no other magistrate, but I was the only magistrate there. There wasn't any other magistrate whom I can go and ask as to how do we go about. But because of the potential that they saw in me, that I will be in a position to handle the position and the court alone, I was placed there. The very first day when I appeared there, I didn't have any experience as a magistrate. But because of the potential that they saw in me, the first day when I appeared as a presiding officer, I had expert applications where I've never dealt with before.
Yes.
Domestic cases, harassment cases, and because I knew that justice delayed is justice denied, I could not set them aside and say that I don't have an experience and I do not know how to deal with such cases. I had to research. I quickly had to research, search for the legislature, apply the right procedure, and I proceeded with the matter. And
Yes.
successfully, I proceeded with such matters to such an extent that I only acted for a period of 4 years, or of 4 months. Then I had to move to Witbank. But because of the manner in which I was working, the branch commander requested the acting chief magistrate not to remove me from that place because
Yes.
they have seen that I have put the confidence of public into the judiciary.
Okay. So you would say that your experience as a magistrate has prepared you for the position you've applied for.
Yes, indeed.
And just in your own words, what is your understanding of what would be expected of you if appointed to do as a member of the Electoral Court? How do you understand that environment very briefly? What is it that you believe would be expected of you in that somewhat unique environment that could be quite demanding?
Firstly, I believe that what is demanded of me is that I should always work in a manner that promotes the interest or the confidence of public into the judiciary. And above all, I should always uphold the Constitution of the Republic.
Yes. And I take it that you've read the legislation?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Justice Mba? Bring it closer. Bring it even closer, sir. And on the side, your mouth would have been turned to so that you don't speak away from it. More to the left, in other words.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, Ms. Lushaba.
Good morning, Justice Mba.
Firstly, I want to thank you for having availed yourself to apply for the position. I think I need to clarify at the outset that the position that's being advertised is for a non-judge member of the Electoral Court.
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, I am aware
You're
of
aware,
it.
good. Now, I've had a look at your application to be a member of this court, and it just caught my attention that you make no mention whatsoever in your application. You don't mention anything about elections, the electoral court itself, why you are interested in the electoral court. There's no mention whatsoever in your application.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the Chief Justice has asked you if at all you are aware of the applicable legislation that applies to the court.
Yes.
Yes, I take it you have familiarized yourself with that.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. As a member of the court, even though you would be sitting as a non-judge member, you will be at some point as the head of that court, I could assign you to write a judgment.
Yes.
You are aware of that?
Yes, I am
Yes.
aware of that.
Now, having gone through your entire CV, particularly your position as a magistrate, acting and permanent, you said you seem to have only sat in the criminal court,
Yes, that is
and
true.
even as a prosecutor, you're obviously in the criminal sector of things.
Yes.
My question to you is, have you ever sat in a civic setting, in a tribunal, whatever, where you had to write a decision in a civic sort of manner, outside of the criminal sector? Have you ever done that?
No, I have never done that, but there are cases that I used to receive from the chiefs that after they've made the decision, they brought the cases to me so that I can make reviews over such cases. And the fact that I've been in the civil matters or criminal cases does not necessarily mean that I won't be in a position to proceed or to be able to deal with electoral cases. It really doesn't really mean that one has to have a specific experience on that particular level of cases. We all start somewhere with no experience, but one will end up being an expert on that particular case. As long as I do have the potential and the capability of dealing with cases, and more so, I will be working with well-experienced judges.
Right. That court does not sit continuously like any other court. It's a specialist court that deals with electoral disputes. I'm sure you've seen that when you studied the legislation.
Yes.
It sits as and when there is a matter. This year we had the general election. It got quite busy, but other than that, it rarely sits. So I take it you are aware that you cannot be appointed as a permanent member to sit permanently on that court. You'll only be called as and when there is a sitting. Now, my question is, as a magistrate, are you allowed that from time to time you could go and sit in other matters outside of the magistracy? Does the magistracy make allowance for that?
If I may answer that, Justice Mba, I'm aware that electoral court sits when and only when there are cases. But if we look at the section 169 of the Constitution, it is clear that there are high courts. There are high courts within the Republic of our country, within the Republic, and there are also specialized courts, such as Electoral Court and Labor Courts. And such court, like Electoral Court, does not sit every time. But such court has the same status with the High Court. And if I am appointed in that particular court, then I will be given some duties within the level of such court where I will be in a position to work throughout when the electoral court is not sitting.
Yeah, perhaps I did not, it's either I did not explain myself quite clearly, or perhaps there's a point you did not quite understand from what I was saying. The electoral court sits spasmodically.
Yes.
Now, as far as it being a specialist court is concerned, you are quite right. I mean, we've got, for instance, the tax court, we've got the competition court, but there the situation is different because people who sit in those courts, these are permanently appointed judges of the High Court. So they get assigned to sit in those courts. The judges who sit in the electoral court, these are permanent judges of various divisions, and they then get assigned from time to time to go and sit and preside in the electoral court. But now your case seems to be different because you are a magistrate. You are not as yet a permanently appointed judge.
Yes.
Now my question to you is, if you were to be appointed as a non-judge member, would the magistracy be willing to release you? Does it happen that a sitting magistrate from time to time goes to sit and adjudicate in a matter outside of the magistracy? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
Thank you, Justice. I do not think that that will be a problem because then they will be in a position to release me from time to time to come and perform my duties, as they will know that I have been appointed in the electoral court.
My last question through you, Chief Justice. Other than applying to be a member of this court, a non-judge member of this court, you did apply for judges' positions in other divisions, am I right?
Yes, I did.
I see. Do you still intend applying?
Yes, I'm still intending.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Justice.
Thank you. For what it is worth, ma'am, magistrates do get excused to attend conferences and so on. Is that not so?
Yes.
I actually often receive requests for magistrates to travel abroad whenever there is something of interest to the institution that requires their contribution or presence there. I take it you'll be in a similar position.
Yes, it is correct.
Should you
Chief
be
Justice.
appointed?
It is correct, Chief Justice.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Msomi.
Thank you, CJ. Good morning, Ms. Lushaba.
Good morning, Commissioner Msomi.
Ms. Lushaba, in 1999, we had a voter turnout of 89.3%. 20 years later, it has gone down to 65.99. What do you attribute that to, the lower voter turnout? There are political parties represented here. Are you able to give them some advice as to what has led to this lower voter turnout?
Thank you,
On a
Commissioner.
point of intervention, Chief Justice,
Yes, Commissioner.
there are no
Malema.
political parties here. There are absolutely no political parties here. We are here representing Parliament of the Republic of South Africa, and therefore we hold no political affiliation We're here to execute the constitutional mandate bestowed on us by the people of South Africa. And if we are regarded as political parties, this thing is going to collapse because we hold different political views. But when we come in here, we hold one view, which is to serve the people of South Africa. We represent Parliament.
Thank you, Commissioner Malema. Commissioner Msomi?
My apologies, Commissioner Malema. Perhaps let me rephrase the question. We have the people's representatives here coming from the National Assembly. What would you advise them to do to increase the voter turnout? Perhaps let's start with the question, why the lower voter turnout, and what advice would you give?
Thank you, Commissioner. My advice that I would give is that for every representative, they should ensure that they are honest, they come out for the public and ensure that the public receives what they promise them. If they promise them, they must deliver what they have promised within the period of working. And by so doing, the community will have trust and confidence in them, and they will then be in a position always to vote and work along with them.
After the 2019 elections, there are those who are calling for what they term the dusting off of the Van Zyl report, Dr. Van Zyl's Lapid report. Are you able to comment on that call? What did the Van Zyl's Lapid report say about the electoral reform, and what are your views on that subject?
My views on the subject is that what I believe in is that every person, they do have the right to outline or say whatever they feel within them, and they do have the right of or the freedom of speech. So each individual, for whatever they foresee or whatever they say, they do have the right to say it out.
May I follow up?
Okay, very well.
Perhaps let's just summarize. What does the Van Zyl's Lapid report say about the electoral system in our country? I hear your answer about the right to express your views, but what does it say in relation to the electoral reform? Perhaps explain to us, how do you understand our current electoral regime to be, and what does Van Zyl's Lapid call for?
He actually indicated that the electoral form should be open. It should not be it should not be a closed one. It should be open in a manner that everyone could see who did one voted for.
Chief Justice,
Yes, Justice Mba.
I think I need to come in here. I'm not sure it's appropriate, in my view, to be asking.
You're just too soft-spoken now. Bring the mic closer, please.
Yeah.
Bring it closer to you.
Chief Justice, what is expected of a candidate is to show a knowledge, a working knowledge of the applicable legislation on how the court works. And I think this candidate has answered that question, that she has familiarized herself with the applicable legislation. As to whether the candidate has read what Mr. Van Zyl said, I wish to put it on record myself as the head of that court. I haven't read Mr. Van Zyl's report. So I think I'm wondering whether the question is actually fair to this candidate.
Thank you, Justice Mba. It struck me, but I thought it was open to the candidate to say, I haven't read it. and she's not even expected to read it. So I hesitated a bit, but I said, well, she can say, no, I haven't read it, and then we can move forward. So, do you want to answer, ma'am? Have you read the report? Have you not read it? Do you want to express a view, or would you rather would you like to let it pass?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Not really, I haven't really read it and know the knowledge about it.
Commissioner Msomi?
CJ, without opening a dialogue in the matter, I would have expected that the broader South African populace would want to know whether the person who has applied to sit on the electoral court understand the dynamics of our electoral regime, the calls for the changes of the electoral regime, and in fact, I was about to refer her to a case where you, Chief Justice, in my view, made a very profound obiter. And I think it's only fair that we put those questions to her so that we can gauge her understanding of electoral law. That's my appeal, Chief Justice.
No, that I understand. I think and she's free to decline to answer or otherwise. I think the intervention by Justice Mba was the following. If the focus, the sharp focus is to be on her suitability to execute the adjudicative responsibilities of somebody appointed to be a member of the Electoral Court, it would probably benefit the interview more if the focus was to be on that. The legislation, for instance, that regulates how political parties are supposed to conduct themselves, that regulates the dispute resolution processes and so on. I'm not going to stop you from asking. I was just highlighting that some of these things may be a bit removed from the area of sharp focus that we must try hard to come close to.
With the greatest of respect, Chief Justice, I've made my point and I stick by what I said. Ms. Lushaba, our Chief Justice, the current Chief Justice, as I say, I've read a lot of his judgments, and if I may say, Chief Justice, this one stood out for me because of my love for electoral law. And that was in the case of my vote counts NPC versus Minister of Justice and Correctional Services in Lanada. And our Chief Justice held in Opita, and I'm going to quote, "The right to stand for public office." I wish I could imitate you now, Chief Justice, how you'll have read this. Probably our Chief Justice will have raised his voice. He would have probably said, "The right to stand for public office is tied up to the right to vote in elections for any legislative body. Every adult citizen may, in terms of the Constitution, stand as an independent candidate to be elected to municipalities, provincial legislatures, or the National Assembly. The enjoyment of this right is not and has not been prescribed by the Constitution. It is just not facilitated by the legislation," close quote. That is Chief Justice Mogoeng. What do you make of this obiter? Do you agree with it? If you do, why? If you don't agree with it, why not? That's my last question, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would say I would agree with it. Reason being that everyone has the right to vote. Everyone has the right to vote, and like the Chief Justice have just said that one cannot, or one is not expected to know everything, even though there are other judgments that I have read, which you may not know, or that I have read about them, and which I had an interest on them concerning the elections during this year, the pre-elections, that is judgments which were taken, where the DNA lodged an application or a review over the case that the commission has taken for it to lodge a formal apology to the public, stating that they should apologize to the public for giving false information to the public that they have fired Mr. Lil. And the other decision that the commission has taken, that they are not going to proceed with the interview or investigation against the ANC, over the allegations that they have uttered that the DA has gained the 1 billion rand over the water tariffs in Cape Town. And at the end of the day, the commission decided to withdraw the decision, and such case did not go to the Electoral Court based on the fact that they have decided to withdraw. And those are some of the cases that I've read and that I had an interest on them.
Chief Justice, do you understand this case? This is my reading. This case is an invitation, in my view, to the South African public to re-look at their electoral system, because currently, members of parliament are not voted in as independent candidates. They serve there at the behest of political parties. And CJ Mogoeng says to us, there is nothing in the Constitution, as far as he's aware, that forbids people to stand as independent candidates and become members of parliament. The only thing that he outlines is that there isn't a legislation that enables it. That's the question really I was trying to elicit from you, as to whether, given that the highest judge in the land has made such a profound obituary, is it not for the public representatives to now re-look at our current electoral system? Thank you.
Prof.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good morning, Ms. Lushaba.
Good morning.
In your motivation, you indicated that you are doing masters in Pretoria,
Yes, that's true.
but you further went on that this is the interest which you want to pursue in procedural law. Then how would your interest fit in within the mandate of the Electoral Commission? Thank you.
Thank you. It is correct that I have enrolled as an LLM student at University of Pretoria, and I had an interest in the procedural or criminal procedure. But that does not stop me from having any interest in other level of the field, of the legal field. So if I am capable of dealing with electoral cases and having I am capable of doing that, and I will be in a position to proceed doing the electoral court cases.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lushaba. But can you please explain more? How would this procedural background fit in? Your capabilities are not in doubt. But the question is, how would your procedural background fit in within the mandate of the Electoral Commission?
Thank you. The procedural procedure will fit in a manner that I will be in a position to preside over such cases procedurally. I will know exactly which procedure to be followed. I will be in a manner to research, irrespective of the field that I will be doing, a different field in the law, but procedurally, I will be in a position to proceed in that particular case.
You have exhausted, Prof. Do you want to go further? No, that was the second question. Are you asking for another chance? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Lushaba, procedural law, which is your criminal law, your evidence, your criminal procedures, are distinct from electoral law.
Yes.
So my issue is your aspirations, because you say this is the field within which you want to pursue. But the basis of my question is, as much as you aspire to pursue the procedural aspect, not the procedure in terms of how the court functions, but I'm asking the basis of the essence of criminal law, criminal procedure issues fitting into electoral law. Thanks.
Thank you. I do understand that the procedural law that I am pursuing now is totally different from the procedure that is followed in the electoral court or the commission, because it is clear that the electoral court has their own procedure, that they create their own procedure that they follow, and they have their own mandate how to proceed in court or pursue their procedures. So it is totally different. In that aspect, it doesn't really affect it won't really affect me, the fact that I am doing procedural law in the criminal procedure, and the fact that I have applied this position in the electoral court, because they do have their own different procedures to be followed. They do not have specific procedures to be followed.
Mpofu SC.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Yes. I'd just like to ask you one thing. I take it, you've said that you've read the important cases in electoral law, and I see that you're familiar with my vote counts here. And I just wanted to check, are you also familiar with Section 19 of the Constitution, which is the one that provides for political rights, the right to vote, the right to stand for office, the right to hold office, the right to form a political party, and so on, all those, that cluster of rights?
Yes.
You are? Okay. Now, my question is this, and it's just a hypothetical situation of how you would approach a matter. If in that cluster of rights, one of the most important rights is the right in Section 19(3)(b) to stand for public office, and if elected, to hold office. And what it really means is that every citizen has that right. So even if you are a beggar in the street corner, you can put yourself up to become the president of the country, for argument's sake. Yeah. Now, given that context, there's in the Electoral Act, which is a child of Section 19, so to speak, there's a requirement that if you're going to form a new political party, you must pay 600,000 rand or 700,000 rand or something like that. Is that provision compatible with the constitutional right to hold office for even a poor person? And if I may, Chief Justice, without giving a preamble, the reason for that provision is obviously a good reason to take away the chance takers who just want to say, I'm a political party, because you can have thousands of people like that. Could that not be achieved by a different method rather than asking for 700,000 rand, which is a lot of money? Let's say by saying you must have 200,000 members or whatever it is, and prove that you have members, so that you don't restrict the right of people to participate in politics.
Thank you. In my view, I would say that that provision in particular, I would say that it does not really go hand in hand with the right of people in the constitution, because they say everyone has the right to hold office or to create a political party. Then if there are people down there who could not, or who does not have that particular kind of money, or they cannot really get any help, they are actually left out to participate. And whereas the constitution is the higher act that should be followed in the republic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Xaba.
Thanks, Chief Justice. Good morning,
Good
Mr.
morning.
Lushaba.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for availing yourself for this position.
Thank you.
And I must say upfront, this is going to be an unfair question to you, but I nevertheless put it to you so as to test your understanding of the position for which you are actually applying. There's a view that says we must amend the Constitution to cause the two elections, the local government elections and the national elections, to happen at the same time. I must say I don't support that view for obvious reasons. Would these reasons be so obvious to you as a candidate for this position? Let me put it differently, to not to make this question difficult for you. What challenges would this put or place on the electoral court, adjudicatively speaking? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think there will be a lot of challenges if there are national elections and the local elections at the same time. There are always problems when there are elections, let alone to deal with the national elections alone. And if we combine the two together, there'll be a lot of problems that will be joined together, and the national elections itself, there won't be any preparations, proper preparations for such elections, and for preparations for the local at the same time. I believe that both elections need its own time to be properly prepared.
Thanks, Chief Justice.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good morning, Ma'am Lushaba.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Mine is just to understand from your side with regard to, I see you have mostly done prosecution and so forth.
Yes,
But
Minister.
when I was, when it just became known in the village where I come from that I'm a law student, during school holidays, I will be requested by Stockfells to help them with the constitution, elections, there and there, the tribal council, sometimes with elections, even with some of the SRC elections. And I see you are a member of the South African Women's Lawyers, a coordinator in Mpumalanga. Have you been involved in some kind of work for the community, which sometimes will include the electoral process, or even elections in your structures, and so that kind of a thing?
No, I've never been involved in such.
Even at the South African Women's, at the chapter of the South African Women's Judges, where you are a coordinator, when you elect the president, or so, you have never done anything related to elections there?
or concerning that, yes, I was involved last year when I attended the conference in Kimberley, and that's when we were electing the president of the new president of the chapter. We were involved in the elections.
Chief Justice, with your permission, I just want to get where you might have involved in terms of voting, but as a coordinator of your province, sometimes they say you become an agent, a party agent when you vote, or you, in that procedure of voting, your involvement was in terms of voting or in terms of the organizing part of the elections. That's what, because that will help me to understand your also kind of involvement in an electoral procedure.
Thank you. When it comes to the fact that I was appointed as a coordinator of the province, that's when I was appointed last year. I was appointed last year as a coordinator. And that was my first conference that I attended after I have been, I have joined the chapter. So that was my first conference that I attended, and that's when I was appointed as a coordinator for the province. So I couldn't be involved in the participating of the appointing the president of the chapter.
Okay, no, thank you.
Ngosi Thomas SC.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning. Good morning, Madam.
Good morning.
Forgot your surname. Just one question for me. Universal adult suffrage lies at the heart of our constitutional democracy. Is that not so?
Yes, it is.
Now, what role, if any, would the Electoral Court play in the realization of the enfranchisement of our people?
The Electoral Court will actually play a role in ensuring that everything is done in accordance with the procedure, and there isn't any one who is left aside.
Would you care to give us an example of what you mean when you say everything will have to be done in accordance with the procedure? Which procedure do you have in mind?
The Electoral Court is there to ensure that the elections are properly done, and there isn't any party which is infringed or prejudiced.
How, in practical terms? Can you give us an example, a concrete example?
Concrete example is, as the Electoral Court is there to ensure that after the decision has been made by the Commission, they ensure that if there are any reviews or appeals which the organization are not happy about the decision that has been taken by the Commission, the Electoral Court is there to ensure that such provisions or such decisions of the Commission are done in an appropriate manner.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief Justice.
Thank you so much, President Maya. Something, it's okay. Nominee C.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Thank you. Did you have regard, when you had regard to the electoral commissions, in fact, you said you had regard to the legislation. Did you also have regard to the rules of the court, electoral court?
Yes, that is the Electoral Court, Electoral Commission Act, and
Yes.
the Municipal Election Act.
Yes. What time frames are there in the rules? If you want to, I heard you mentioning reviews and appeals in response to a question from Commissioner Ngosi Thomas. What are the time frames if you want if a party wants to bring an appeal or a review before the Electoral Court? What are the time frames within which period must that application be brought?
Firstly, if the appeal is brought before the electoral court within a period of 3 days, that case must be heard.
Yes. Why do you think that is so? Those short periods? Because I'm sure if you've compared it with the Magistrates Court rules, you'll find that these are very short periods of time given to the parties. Why do you think that is the reason?
The reason being that it is an urgent court. It is an urgent court that such cases must be heard urgently.
Yes.
And they must be decided urgently.
No, thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honorable Malema.
Thank you, CJ. Ma'am, I got an impression that when Commissioner Mpofu asked the question about people paying money for registering political parties, you seem to be agreeing that there is such a law. Is there such a law that asks people to pay money? And if it's there, which law is that?
What I meant is that when you register a political party, the commissioner is there to ensure that the political party that is registered is not in conflict with any other political party that has been registered concerning the colors of the political party, the logo of the political party, the name of the political party. And in such instance, it is the duty of the commission to ensure that any other political party that is registered should not have any conflict with a new political party that is registering or the old political party that is there.
In this commission here, we are allowed to ask 2 questions, and if you are not going to answer my question, I'll have to sit on it until you answer it. Do people, or rather, are we expected to pay any money when we register a political party? And if the answer is yes, which law requires of us to pay money? Not color and logo and all that, money.
I think in section 19 of the Constitution, it states that when the political party is registered, there's a fee that is expected from that particular party.
In the Constitution?
Yes.
Thank you.
Could you be mistaken, ma'am? Could you be mistaken? Or
Chief Justice,
I'm just trying to accommodate.
Thank you.
Could you be mistaken, or are you sure?
I actually wanted to say in the Election Act. In the Election Act.
Then I have to make a follow-up. Which section of the Election Act requires of us to pay money if we register political parties?
Section 19 of the Election Act.
Section 19 of the Electoral Act. Is her answer CJ?
I heard it's Honorable Dodofu.
Yeah, thank you very much, CJ. Ma'am, my question based on your responses. Since the advent of the democratic order in South Africa in 1994, have you ever participated in elections, whether as a voter or a party agent or an officer of the IEC?
Yes, I did participate
What
as a voter.
What was your experience in any of those?
The first experience, that was when we started voting in 1994. It was the first time when we voted. The elections was okay because we were happy. It was for our first time to vote, and everything went well.
Or it means you only participated as a voter, not as a party agent and not as an electoral officer of the IEC?
No.
Okay, my last question. Are you aware that in South Africa we use two different systems, the electoral systems? That is for national and provincial
Yes.
elections and
The
local
ballot.
government elections?
Yes.
And if you do know, what are the differences between the two?
The difference between the two is that when you vote for national, you vote for the national, that is, you vote for the presidency of the country. And the provincial, you vote for the province.
Let's leave it, it's
Or
fine,
local.
Chief Justice. There's a vacancy, I can take over. Oh.
I'm joking, man.
I apologize, colleagues. I got distracted for a while there. You have to work your way up to this level, Commissioner, though. I must warn you. Commissioner Singh?
Thank you very much, President Maya. Just two short questions. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
And happy belated birthday on a milestone birthday.
Thank you.
When I look at the questionnaire that you filled, you said, page 21, I'm currently enrolled at the University of Pretoria for LLM in procedural law. That's what you said. But in your CV, under qualification, you put LLM procedural law. How do you explain that? Because my understanding is you only put down a qualification when you've completed it.
Oh, I think there might be a mistake if I put it as a qualification. What I meant is that I have presently enrolled the LLM with the University of Pretoria, not that I have a qualification.
Yeah, you've said that. I'm reading what you wrote. On page 21, you say you've enrolled.
Yes.
On page 22, under your CV, you say qualification LLM. But I'll leave it at that. My second and last question, President Maya, I know it's two questions, is I'm still trying to understand what has driven you, what passion in you has driven you to apply to sit on this electoral court. And I'm not hearing it, unless I'm missing something. But can you very briefly tell, what is the passion in you? What drove you to make this application? What can you add? What value can you add? Thank you.
Thank you. What has driven me to apply for this position is that I really want to be part and parcel of the elections and to contribute as a member or as the member of the community to participate in the elections and to ensure that elections are conducted freely and voluntarily.
Thank you. That's an answer.
You're excused, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chief Justice.